Hello again and welcome for those who are joining. Let's talk about another very interesting subject, language learning models in R&D and search and design in chemical spaces. So what is it? We will talk about that and how is it actually changing the game. And for that, please welcome our next speaker, Sven Jager.
And for the opportunity to speak here. Hello, everybody. Okay, now I can hear my...
Yes.
Okay, great.
Hello to you again and welcome. Very happy to see you. It's sort of a tradition. We see each other every couple of years. Right?
Yes, exactly. Like last time it was 2022.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this very interesting subject. First of all, probably just let's put back a little bit of context. What is it exactly, a language learning model?
I need to correct a bit. It's large language model.
Large language, sorry.
But no worries.
Large language, sorry.
Wait a second, I have a slide also.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So in Sanofi actually we're having kind of two classes of language models. But circling a little bit back, what is a language model in general? It's actually a big neural network. Like I think everybody knows ChatGPT right now from home. So that's a typical product that you can do out of a large language model. It's a nice experience, you can talk to it because these models, they learned text, so they're pretty good with grammar. So they're working with text, you can chat with them, that's pretty cool. But in Sanofi we have also different kind of large language models. Language models that learned the language of life, which is molecular data, molecular language models that learned, for example, mRNA. We presented this last year with our codon bird model. We are classifying these models in Sanofi as expert AI. So we are having these two models. One model you can talk to, and one model is pretty good in generating any kind of molecular asset.
And what is the difference between them, basically?
It's actually the difference is how you are training them. That means like a language model that is trained for human language learned on text. Typically, you are saying like this model learned the whole internet, publications, web pages, books. They're pretty good in grammar. They're trying actually to predict the rest of a sentence or a missing word in a sentence. And then imagine to do this billion of times. And then the model saves this knowledge in their weights as a memory, which is pretty amazing. Like we're experiencing this every time. The molecular large language models on the other side, they are learning our molecular data. That means like really I'm talking about molecular sequences, DNA sequences, mRNA, molecules, like really chemical molecules, functional groups, and they're learning to learn really this language of life, and then you can create really powerful models that can predict properties, for example. But you cannot chat with them. So there's always one side and another.
And how do you use LLMs? Because we talked a lot about LLMs. That's why between language, large modules and large language, basically, how do you use LLMs in the drug design process? Because it seems a little bit still shaky for me.
I was drawing a picture here. That's an excellent question. Because in order to explain something about the drug design process, I need to explain also where are the challenges of this. Because it's a very nerdy topic, I have to say. So typically, as a researcher, you have a molecule that is your target, and then you want to design a drug actually for this molecule that binds on it in order to have an effect. Just simplifying this. So you want to search actually this substance, but the main problem is that this substance, the space where you are searching, this is huge. Talking about organic chemistry. These molecules that are man-made, that means like the solution space of molecules that a chemist can cook for this molecule is huge. And also this comes with a lot of different properties that you also want to optimize. You does not want only a molecule that binds here, you want also a molecule that is less toxic, of course, because they are drugs for us as patients. So you want to have a safe drug. So you have a lot of parameters you want to optimize. And this feels like, and this is the nice picture of it, like searching a needle in a haystack. But the real picture here is actually that you have a lot of haystacks, and each haystack has different needles. And from these needles you could make a new haystack to search. And that's really this chemical search problem. And as an organic chemist or medical chemist, you are very good in designing these compounds, because that's your passion, that's what you learned. Like, you trained your own neural network of really learning what is a good functional group, what do I need to change in my molecule actually to increase the affinity. You're using the structures and everything, but you're never seeing the full space. And that's kind of the main challenge that you have. How can I find faster the right and also the better molecules?
And how does LLM are helping to do that?
So how does the LLM actually helps on this? The LLM helps you to navigate in this space. And that's important. The LLMs can, and this is beautiful about text-based LLMs, for example, they can do reasoning. Everybody knows this when they're using ChatGPT at home. You can ask ChatGPT why he gives you this answer. And that's a nice ability. So it's an integrated explainability. Also, they have zero and many shot abilities. What does this mean? That means you can use this model and you can just predict without training. Or you're feeding a bit of examples in the context and you can predict again. So you are bypassing, actually, by using a language model, the need of a data scientist. Of course, this is a controversial topic, since zero shot and many shot is never as good as somebody who's really building an own model for this. This is tailor-made. But the model is helping you with the abilities to recognize pattern, to do advanced reasoning, as well as also to predict the affinities directly and know actually what is good about a given molecule.
So could you share probably an example so that it's much clearer as well?
Yes, this is an excellent question. And in order to bridge this gap between a language model for language and a molecular model that can generate molecules, we generated the search and design platform, where we teached actually a language model that works on language to generate molecules, predict molecules, as well as also helping the chemist as a small sidekick to design and be really like a small co-pilot. And that's the real big innovation here. Of course, we are doing a simple interface and doing a cool app out of this, which means like you have a nice user experience. Think about you are a chemist, and now you can use an application like ChatGPT that also enables you to draw molecules and see what you are drawing and get this directly into the context. Like a molecular working bench with an AI on top, which is also a small chemist.
So what makes new generation of AI models, such as this one, different from the traditional ones?
Great question. Let's go to a quick example how this looks like. So we created a small example conversation that you have. And this is very simple, and that's really like it is in the application. You are opening the application and you can ask the large language model what you want to do. Right now, we are enabling with the model molecular design search. That means like you can really search for new compounds and generate compounds. You can analyze chemical reactions. You can have structural analysis, and also you can predict properties of the compounds. With this together, the LLM is pretty powerful. And the next step that you want to do is you can just prompt the LLM to generate your new compounds. You can just upload compounds, draw compounds, and tell the LLM, hey, this is an interesting molecular series for a target. Can you create me new ones that are easy to cook, for example, or that are matching the structural motif that I'm drawing? So you can be very creative, and the LLM takes the next step. What the LLM can also do, because we're talking here about a lot of complexity, the LLM helps you also to visualize. Think about, you want to look which are the similar molecules to the molecules that the LLM generated. So the LLM creates for you a very nice visualization of the molecular space that is generated in 2D so that we can also understand it. On the other hand, and this is something where we are very proud of, so we teach the text model to do direct modifications to the compound that you are interested in. So when you are a chemist and you have a specific compound that you are interested in, typically, and that's also, I have to say, there's a bit of the trick that we have. The molecules can be represented as these nice structures that you can see here in the corner. But in the computer, you can represent them also as text, which is nice. So it's a text-based encoding. The large language model understands this text-based encoding and can then also find patterns. And we thought about, how about we are changing the model in this way that the model cannot only read this and find the patterns, also that the model can do modifications with language. You are, for example, saying the model, can you change this functional group of the compound? And the model changes the smile and creates you a complete different molecule based on your instructions. So it's like a little chemical assistant that you have, like a sidekick. And think about that this assistant is way faster.
So that's very interesting. Basically, you can do everything you want thanks to the help of LLMs.
Everything in one session. And this is really nice. You don't need to make a meeting with a data science group, for example, when you are a chemist. You are now empowered, thanks to AI, to do your own designs super fast.
Let's be honest. With AI, we're putting in the hands of technology, if I can say so, our health. So how can we ensure the safety of using IT tools such as this one, especially in a sensitive or human-related network?
This is a great question and also an important question.
Very important.
Because the safety of our patients is very important to us. I have to say one thing. When you are designing an AI compound, it needs to go to the same regulatory process than a normal design compound. There's no difference in testing when you are going to the laboratory, when you are doing the clinical trial. The only difference is that it comes from an AI. However, there are, of course, risks associated with using the AI. I'm always advocating, if you want to use a generative model, specifically also with text, it makes a lot of sense if you are right now an expert in the field. There's always the risk of hallucinations. Everybody knows this who, for example, also is programming in Python or other languages. You are very good and fast when you are using large language models supporting you with programming, when you know how to do code. So it's easy to correct the LLM. For a chemist, it's the same. The LLM gives you nice ideas about interesting compounds. And when you, as a chemist, as a human in the loop, see these compounds, then you are thinking like, okay, the first one's making no sense at all. I can give the LLM this as a feedback. And that's a really advantage of having an application like this, because the large language models is reading your language, your human feedback that you would like give a chemist, and reinterpreting it, giving it in the context, and give you compounds based on your preference. And this is really the nice thing, that you really, with this multimodality approach, bridging the gap between those two language models.
That's quite impressive what you can do. So I suggest we watch a video to illustrate your insights.
And now we have a pretty nice video summarizing everything.
Revolutionary generative AI solution for early research in drug discovery. Imagine a ChatGPT-like interface that empowers chemists to create new molecules interactively and conversationally. That's exactly what we've built. This AI-powered tool tackles the challenge of designing small molecular compounds in vast chemical spaces. It transforms a process that once took weeks into mere minutes, bridging the gap between preparative medical chemists and computational experts. With features like in-context learning and human-in-the-loop design, our solution guides chemists towards innovative ideas, potentially leading to higher quality molecules. By simplifying workflows and accelerating compound development, we're not just saving time and costs, we're paving the way for faster drug development with fewer side effects. Search and design in chemical spaces embodies Sanofi's AI-first approach, empowering our scientists to deliver better outcomes for patients, faster than ever before.
Very interesting what we can get thanks
Thank you.
to LLMs. Very interesting. Let me ask you something.
Yes.
One last question, and then we'll give the floor to you if you have any questions to Sven. So what are the pros and the cons of using generative models in scientific research?
Great question. I could talk very long about this, actually. I'm trying to keep it quick. So there's a lot of pros, but of course, I'm also a data scientist, so I'm already on the LLM side. A lot of the biggest pros here are, for example, the speed that you have and also the capabilities that you have when you're working with an LLM. When you are, for example, a human and you are designing molecules, just the number of molecules you are designing is a limit. Like, you cannot work with millions of molecules. Like, we cannot comprehend this. But for a language model, that's simple. And also, the language model, and it's kind of a cool thing, it's easy to use. You don't need to meet with somebody, you can do it via an experience. And that's a nice thing, also empowering other people. One of the most important things that I like about this generative AI, expert AI, large language model approach is that the models, they learned from publications, and they learned from molecular databases. So they are also somehow abstractly bridging the gap between scientific publications and text and parameters that you have for molecules. Together with reasoning, you have actually a pretty smart assistant. And one of the biggest advantages with this, and this is really the quality of what you are getting back. And that means not only that you are saving time using the LLM, you're creating something that is far better than you could not create before because you are searching faster. And that's kind of the nice paradigm that you can push. That's why it makes a lot of sense to use these LLMs. However, there are also a couple of cons. One of the biggest cons is, of course, everybody knows this, hallucinations. ChatGPT hallucinates, telling you stuff that is not true. For the molecular generation, it's the same. Like, of course, these models are also hallucinating and creating you a beautiful molecule. And if you are not an expert, then you might think, oh, this looks good. Maybe we can take this. But if you are a chemist and understanding the language behind chemistry, then you're really seeing this. And then it's simple also to correct. But you need to take care of this. Sometimes also the LLM creates compounds that are broken, like really technical. But that's a typical thing when you're working with LLMs. It's always kind of a 90% thing, like it does 90% the job, and then you're adding actually 10%. That's why it's always important to have a human in the loop. The other thing I have to say, also in the light of VivaTech, because I saw when I arrived here that the NVIDIA GTC is also here next, which is beautiful. So I think, and why is NVIDIA so popular? Because the graphic cards are needed to train these models. So, which means like this is expensive and it's very difficult to acquire also the hardware and train these models and scaling them out. So there's a lot of investments that need to be done in order to train these models, as well as also to customize these models. And that's kind of I would say one of the downsides. Not everybody can create these models. You need to have access to cloud, you need to have access to compute.
Well, that's quite impressive what you can do. I hear that human is still important behind technology. That's
exactly.
Very important.
It's still very important. And also it's important because it's powerful. You are far more powerful as a human together with an AI, as a human alone or an AI alone. Like the combination makes it.
That's the perfect takeaway. Thank you very much. A great applause to you. Thank you. Do we have any questions in the audience, please? Don't hesitate to raise your hands. Yes?
Yes.
We can't hear you.
Yeah,
without microphone, forget it.
Thank you. So LLMs are built in a way.
If you can
that-
speak a little louder and in the
put it
microphone,
next.
thank you.
LLMs are built in a way that they predict the next word. And my question is that using LLMs wouldn't just produce things that seem right because it's just words that it has seen in other papers and there's no logic behind it. And if we want to actually create a model that can find pattern between molecules and not pattern between words, should we not use another model which is not an LLM, but a model that is trained basically more on the molecules and less on words?
This is an excellent question, actually. You have talking about model architectures, because that's really interesting. You have a lot of different model architectures for sure. GPT, for example, training task is predicting the rest of the sentence, like predicting. You have the BERT models predicting the missing word actually randomly. You have also more exotic things like diffusion models. It depends what kind of data you have and how you are transforming the data in terms of semantics. Which means, like, as I showed in this slide, the small molecule can be also a word, a very abstract word, an encoding actually. And the large language models, due to this nature, predicting actually when you are, for example, tokenizing this molecule, that means, like, think about this molecule is not a word, it's a sentence, then you can do the same contextual approach as with language. If I have this functional group upstream, what do I have with a high probability downstream when you're looking at the context task? And then the model learns, how can I actually represent a molecule in space with functional groups that are actually chemical relevant and working. One thing, because I simplified this during this talk here, of course we are conditioning the models for the search. It means the model does not only understand the chemistry itself, it understands also what is good and what is bad. And that's the many shot capabilities that we are teaching the model. It means, like, the model knows what is good and what is bad and can then try to forecast based on the patterns and the reasoning. And that's mainly the advantage that you have. But of course, yeah, one of the most important tasks also for language model is architecture design, as well as also the input data.
And one question behind.
Yes, hello. Just a question.
Sorry, bring it really near.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it good now?
It's better.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Thank
perfect.
I guess, could you talk about how the model that you've been showing is proprietary? Or do you also leverage open source model that can leverage the knowledge from different academics or different companies? I mean, how do you play on those two aspects?
This is an excellent question. Yeah, you have great open source models like Hugging Face, a Paris company. Like this is also like one of the main hubs where we are using a lot of code. But I can tell you it depends on the use case. For example, the model that you saw here behind is a couple of models actually, but the main agentic model is Claude 3.5 from AWS Bedrock. So it's a commercial model. We're having also model that we are training ourselves, which are, for example, the codon word model we presented last year, which is Sanofi's first large language model for mRNA. This model is trained with 10 million mRNA sequences. And that's kind of the thing. We trained this from scratch and open sourced it. You can find it on the Sanofi public GitHub, which is great. We are not so far that we can publish direct from Hugging Face, but you can get the artifacts from the models actually. Open source is something that I really appreciate in the whole community, because when you have open source models, it is easier to get access to models, to the explainability, as well as also to regulations. Think about GDPR. When you want to work with sensitive data, then it's mandatory that the model itself lives in Europe, cannot be in US. So you need to have full control over the model. And it works better if stuff is open source. However, talking about the money, it's very expensive to train them. And you need experts. And you need people really with dedication and time. when you are taking a model that is already commercially available and trained, like Claude, for example, or GPT, then you have an easier starting point. You sourced out the compute for inference. Everything is simpler, which is great. But you're losing control. So you need to think actually, which is the model that is best for the task that I'm doing, and then trying to optimize this road. That's what we are doing. But the open source part is always something we are prioritizing. I'm a big fan of open source, and all language model we are publishing, you can find it on our public GitHub, download them, and can use them for academic research.
One other question, we take one last one, and of course, Sven, you are with us in case there are additional
Yeah, sure.
questions.
I'm also around here, like if somebody wants to chat.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. A great
Thank you,
applause
Christina.
again. Thank you, dear audience. Of course, we have plenty of things to discover, some innovations. You have also a journey through virtual reality. If you'd like to visit our Modulus new plant, we have a McLaren, a fantastic Formula One car, and obviously a journey through from R&D, research and development, and also up to the patient. So please enjoy, have a lovely journey on VivaTech and on our booth. Thank you very much.